Hey everyone, my name is Laura and welcome back to Book Bubbler. I have a Friday Reads for you guys today. Last week, I'm sorry I didn't get one up. I had so many technical problems. The short version is the memory on my phone, which is what I used to film and everything on, was so full that I couldn't open and use almost all of my apps, including Instagram. So it took 3 days and an overnight factory reset of my phone, but finally it's working again. So that's where I was. So consequently, I have a lot to catch up on this week. I'm going to make things very fast, do quick summaries of the books and a quick thought, and keep moving. So look, there's a lot to go through. Before we get started on that, this past Monday was my mom's birthday. She's 77, not happy about it, but whatever. And I asked her to pick the song of the week this week. Now, I had already picked A Matter of Trust by Billy Joel, which is one of her favorite songs. And I think she blew out the speakers in her house cranking it one day. I'm not sure though, because my parents both blew out speakers regularly. So I don't know. Anyway, so I picked that one and I said, well, do you want to pick something else, another song or two? And there are, I think, 13 songs here. I'm just going to list them really quickly and I'll link them to all the videos below if they exist on YouTube. So here we go. This is a pretty good summary of my mom's taste in music. Matter of Trust by Billy Joel, White Sport Coat and a Pink Carnation by Marty Robbins. I always make fun of that song. Fooled Around and Fell in Love by Alvin Bishop. I love that one. Poor Little Fool, Ricky Nelson, my mom's boyfriend when she was a teenager. Betty Davis Eyes. Is that by Kim Davis? I forgot to look it up. By Kim somebody. Kim Carn? Kim Carn sounds right. I know I have the 45 of that because I'm old too. Walk Away Joe by Trisha Yearwood. Treat Me Nice by Elvis. Blue Moon by the, oh God, I can't even read this. The Marcells. Rollin' in the Deep by Adele. When It's Love by Van Halen. Learning to Fly, Tom Petty. Come On Everybody by, oh God, I can't read this. Elda Lehman? No idea. Come Go With Me by the Del Vikings. And finally, Tusk by Fleetwood Mac, especially the live version from their 2008, 2012, whatever. That one I know I've pulled up to the house before when my dad was alive. And I hear all I hear is Tusk. Boom, 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 boom. And then I scare them when I walk in and they're surprised because, well, you can't hear anything when it's cranked. Anywho, those are my mom's birthday songs of the week. Enjoy yourself. Okay, I can put that down. I have only 2 books that I have hauled, which is fairly impressive. One is the third in Esmeralda Santiago's trilogy of memoirs. This is the Turkish Lover, excuse me. I think this is her late teens / early 20s. So very happy to have a copy of this. The only bummer is that it does not match these 2 editions that I have. Annoying, but it's fine. I'm trying not to replace it. Sorry for the frog in my throat, my gosh. Then I got my book of the month book, The Starcrossed Sisters of Tuscany. This one is about a family whose second daughter was like cursed to never find true love. And these 2 or 3 sisters go to Tuscany to their ancestral family home. And the second sister finds out about the curse and tries to break it. So any time spent in Tuscany is a good time for me. Okay, on to the books. I've got them chunked into fiction and nonfiction. Excuse me. I will start with fiction, and these are not really in any order. So Doctor Who Peacemaker. This is an ebook. This one is by James Swallow. I gave it 3 stars. This stars the 10th Doctor and Martha. And they are in the 1880s in the Wild West. There's a snake oil guy and his sidekick who is a Pawnee Indian, which just makes me think of Parks and Recreation. Anyways, so they are going around selling this snake oil and curing people of smallpox, which shouldn't be because that's not cured for quite a long time. So the Doctor and Martha show up, and people who have been cured tend to have these crazy nightmares. And then there are these 2 look like, I mean, they're in the bodies of these 2 sort of known cowboys that are around, but they're acting weird and they're shooting people with laser guns. This, again, shouldn't exist. And they're asking for the snake oil salesman man. So the doctor and Martha are trying to figure out how to help these people, what these things are really that are in the bodies of these two things, and how to fix everything. So this was fun. This was interesting. I really like reading Doctor Who books. I should do it more often. I have enough of them on my shelf. I didn't need to check this one out from the library. But yeah, it was entertaining and a good time. And any time spent with the 10th Doctor is a good time for me. So there's the one. Crime and Punishment by Dostoyevsky. So I read this in high school and absolutely hated it. This was my most hated book until this reread. And I'm giving this 3 stars this time, which is, I am amazed that it's that high. I know lots of other people who didn't have my weird backstory rating it 4 and 5 stars, and I get it, but I can't get there quite yet. So I don't think I have to wrap this up. There's been so much discussion over on Danny's channel, Spinelli Speaks. I will link her below. We had lots of wonderful live conversations, live shows, and a super robust Voxer group. I could barely read to keep up. I don't think I commented once. It was hard enough just to maintain reading what everyone was saying. All I remembered from the first reading was the crime itself, when his sister and another lady meet in Russia, and the very end. And mostly I could just focus on the very end, the epilogue, which should just be called part 7, quite frankly. But that's all I could focus on, and I was so afraid of slipping up and saying something that I'm glad that I couldn't keep up with the conversation on Voxer, because I didn't want to be like, well, because of blah, blah, you know? So, glad to have finished it. Glad it's off of my currently reading pile, and glad that I no longer hate it. I mean, I didn't devote a lot of time to it or energy towards hating this book. You know, I didn't revile it or anything, but yeah, so glad to have read it. And I think I'll hang on to this just so I don't have to buy it again in future, because I can foresee myself in another 20 years rereading this and getting something different out of it. So yeah. Then 8 Ghosts, published by English Heritage. This is 8 new ghost stories by current authors: Mark Haddon, Jeanette Winterson, Sarah Perry, Andrew Michael Hurley, Stuart Evers, Camila Shamsi, Kate Clancy, and Max Porter. And then at the end, there is an afterword by Andrew Martin that sort of covers ghost stories in general, the history of ghost stories, and mentions a lot of books I already knew of, a few I didn't, so I'm looking forward to going back and reading them at some point. And then it's called A Gazetteer of English Heritage Hauntings. So this covers that gazetteer part, which of all the ghost stories, I liked them all. They were just fine. Of course, I liked some more than others. So I'm averaging just a 3 for all the ghost stories. One was really creepy though. But all these stories are set in an English heritage property. So in that gazetteer at the very end, they cover each property, you know, where it is and the ghosts that supposedly live there, the history of the palace. You know, that was just as interesting, if not more interesting to me than the stories themselves. So 3.5 to 4 stars. If you can find a copy, that's great. I wouldn't say run out and get it. It's the best thing ever, but I really enjoyed this one, and I was glad to have it to kind of dip into over the Halloween season. And then 2 romance novels that ticked me off. What number is this? I have this as number 10 in the Virgin River series, but it's listed as 9 some other places. So it's Angel's Peak by Robyn Carr. Why this book ticked me off. The main couple, Francie and Sean, are both a-holes, and one of my least favorite tropes, which I found out about while reading this book, I remembered how much I hated this, is secret baby. It just drives me crazy, because very often there is 0 reason for it, much like in this book. So the 2 of these ding-dongs were together for a couple of years when they're in their early 20s. They were both in the Air Force. He was a hotshot pilot. She was a nurse that worked on the helicopters to do like evacs and stuff. And he got a promotion to learn how to fly a new plane somewhere else in the country. And she said, well, are we going to get married or not? I want to have kids and get married. And he was like, oh no, I'm never doing that. You know, I don't like kids. I don't want to be tied down with marriage. And she flies off the handle. They get in a huge argument and break up. A few months later, he realizes his mistake, tries to contact her, can't find her. She has moved, number's not valid, whatever. So 4 years later, Sean is in town visiting his brother Luke, who just got married, who lives in Virgin River. Sean is on leave. He heads out of town because, again, honeymoon phase for his brother. So he's out of town for the night, just drives to the coast of California to have dinner and whatever, and happens to run into Francie with some of her friends. He accosts her at the car, asks to talk. She says, no, absolutely not. They're both so stubborn. It is maddening. And of course, she has a 4-year-old daughter that is theirs, and she never said anything to him about it. So angry. I was swearing at this book when I was reading it. I'm like, oh, come the, you know. They get their act together, and it's all resolved in the first half of the book. So what saved this book for me was literally everybody else in the book. Her mother, I really liked her mother. I liked Sean's mother, who was also Luke's mother, who we got to know a little bit at Luke's wedding. And there's a marriage of 2 more people from Virgin River that was just delightful to read and made me tear up. And potential new loves for 2 older people in the town. I really like that. So again, it's not about the main couple for the series, generally speaking. It's about everyone else in town and catching up. So a generous 3 stars, but really more like 2, 2.5. I will read the rest of the series, absolutely. This is the first in the Bridgerton's series, excuse me, I can't talk today. I really want to read the whole series before the adaptation premieres on Netflix on December 25th, Christmas Day. I can do it, I know I can do it, but oh boy, I love the Bridgertons as a family, and the first third to half of this book was just delightful. Like 5-star read for me. I was so psyched about it. Like loved it, loved it. Then once Daphne and, oh my God, what's his name? Simon. Once she contrives a way to make them be engaged and saves his life, fair enough. I got really annoyed with the 2 of them. More with her than him. She seemed really sharp and with it and intelligent and bright and observant and witty, and then she got engaged and she became too stupid to live. She just drove me absolutely bonkers. And then Simon, with his irrationality of not telling his wife, he told her that he couldn't have children, which is not true. He just doesn't want to have children. Big distinction for someone who you know wants to have kids, even though she married him thinking he couldn't have kids, you know. Like, lie on lie for really no reason. Just be honest. Have a conversation like adults. There is a, I think, I wouldn't have picked up on this perhaps maybe even 5 years ago, how bad this is, but there's a rape scene here that really, really ticked me off. There was another book recently, I don't remember what it was, but I was ranting to Danny about this on Marco Polo, and she was like, didn't you read a book about this too? It makes me so angry. Like, rape scenes make me so angry. This made me so mad. It's all okay at the end, but also the pacing for this seemed really off. It was like the first third-ish that I really enjoyed was written by a different person than the rest of the book. And at the very, very end, you get the same feeling as the first part. So I'm giving it 2 stars, but I really liked the first part. So I don't know. I seem to be in the minority. I don't know. Easy to read, enjoyable enough in parts, but made me really angry. So, And then the last of the fiction books is Spectacle, Volume 3 by Megan Rose Gedris. This is the conclusion of this circus set supernatural murder mystery. Finally, the ghost confesses her love for the bearded lady, which took far too long, quite frankly. It should have been done in the first book, but whatever. There's more high stakes this time around. The circus is stuck on train tracks in a big snowstorm up a mountain. And there's another death or 2, more murders. The freaks keep getting freakier, and I use that in the terms of this book. So really popular circus-wise, not in this town they're stuck in currently, but they had been doing really well because of all the quote-unquote freaks. You do find at the very end who the real murderer is, but it's 2 pages and it's not explained at all. It's just shown. And it was sort of a womp womp, like real letdown after all the stuff. Like 3 or 4 more pages would have been excellent and rounded it out nicely, but it just felt like it just boom, ended. So I don't know. 3 stars, enjoyable. I would say read this series. It's nothing bad about it. I liked the first 2 volumes more, but it was just fine. On to nonfiction. How am I doing on time? Okay. Another ebook for me. At least in the city, someone would hear me scream. This is by Wade Rouse. Wade also has the pen name of Viola Shipman. So that's, you know, historical fiction. Wade and his, I don't know if they're married, husband, partner, Gary. I'm just going to say husband because I think they are married. So Wade and his husband, Gary, decide to move from the big city of St. Louis up to Hicktown, as he calls it, Nowheresville, Michigan, on the western coast of Michigan. It's Saugatuck, which is a ritzy artist community, in my opinion, and not the middle of nowhere, but I think where they live is much more rural, and they have lots of farms around them, and they have acreage and things. So little, you know, niggling points, but Wade doesn't sugarcoat things. He references Brittany and Christina. There's a Charles Nelson Riley joke that made me laugh out loud. And it's pitted and sort of structured against Walden by Thoreau. Wade's grandmother loved Walden. She carried a copy of Walden and her Bible with her, I guess, everywhere. Those were her 2 standbys. And she used to call Wade Little Thoreau when they were when he was little. They had a property in the Ozarks on water, and they loved nature together, and somehow Wade had become citified over the years and wanted to get back to his roots, reconnect with his grandmother who had passed on already. And so there are snippets from Walden throughout. Gary calls him Thoreau sometimes. He talks about the book and the author sprinkled throughout it. So each season, there are lessons sort of set within the seasons of the year, and he kind of pits the city against rural life. So you're keeping a scorecard after each chunk of essays. They're not chapters because there are essays in between, but about he and Gary and finding out rural life and raccoons and going to feed stores and trying to garden and grow your own vegetables and wildlife and the gay scene and grocery shopping and all this stuff. So it was humorous and I liked it, but it wasn't the best thing I've ever read. He's written several other memoirs on top of his fiction work under Viola Shipman's name. But it was nice to read something that was set in the upper Midwest. Not too far from me-ish. So 3 stars, enjoyable. Another 3-star, Queen Victoria's Scottish Diaries by John Carr. If you would like an extremely, extremely detailed account of Queen Victoria's trips to Scotland and her travels around, this is the only book you should get. It's 200 pages, roughly. It's extremely heavy. There are photographs throughout of, illustrations too of, 1700s, 1800s of castles and, locks around where she had visited, plus some modern day photographs in color. They are usually not set by the sections where she is visiting the places, which is stupid because why wouldn't you just do that? That's really dumb. That annoyed me. I appreciate the author's detailed research and everything going into it. So you get excerpts from Victoria's diary, you get excerpts from her friends' diaries, you get excerpts from letters that are written back and forth, not only with her circle, but also with people in the town and people who owned the castles where she was going to be staying. You get menus of dinners the town hosted. You also get the bill for each grocery line item, which I don't care about. There's a couple of maps in here, but I couldn't understand them that much. it was just too much. If you really want to do a deep dive and not read much from the lady herself or much from anyone really that mattered, there are also excerpts from diaries of people that lived in the small towns that she came through. So again, very well researched, but that's not the book that I was looking for reading this. I was looking for mostly her words with, it was like, 2/3 of her and 1/3 of everything else that was in here. And it was like 3/4 everything else and maybe 1/4 her, So it was fine. The Fire Never Goes Out by Noelle Stevenson. This is a graphic memoir. Noelle wrote Nimona, Lumberjack. She's the showrunner for She Ran the Princess of Power on Netflix. So it's 2011, one moment please, 2011 through 2019 about her life. It's journal excerpts, doodles she has done, and then stuff from her Tumblr account. It's a history of her career, essentially, since it starts when she is in college, all the way through where she is essentially now, to her marriage, and about her mental illness. I'm going to say she doesn't ever name her diagnosis. I didn't look it up to see what the diagnosis is, because she does get a diagnosis at the end of the book in the last year that's covered here, and it helps her understand herself better. And so that was good. I liked the parts about how she felt internally, and fire is a big deal for her. She feels like she's burning from inside a lot, or things are being consumed by fire. And I liked her finding herself. This wasn't the best thing I've ever read, and I'm not a super fan of Nimona and She-Ra. I like them and I really enjoy them, but I don't identify with them overly, and it's not something I would go to reread necessarily. So 3 stars, not bad at all. I enjoyed it. If it's interesting to you, go read it. It was a quick read, but what was not a quick read? The Suspicions of Mr. Witcher, A Shocking Murder and the Undoing of a Great Victorian Detective by Kate Summerscale. So this is the first real story, it's true, of Inspector Witcher and the Road Hill House murders. So a young boy was murdered. He was taken from his crib. I think he's 2 or something, taken from his crib at night, and no one heard or saw anything. A window was open downstairs that seemed suspicious. It shouldn't have been. And they find the boy's body in the outhouse, in the privy. They call Inspector Witcher in to investigate, and he suspects that the eldest daughter, this is the husband, her father, was on a second marriage, and this child that was murdered was from the second marriage, or a product of the second marriage. So Mr. Witcher suspects the eldest daughter from the first marriage, and it's all kind of weird. No one in the house will confess anything. Everything seems to be odd, but then the local police, the constabulary, don't think it's anything. They think Mr. Witcher is nuts and losing his mind, but Witcher is determined. So there's a trial. It ends up that she's let go and no one knows really who done it. Then it covers the rest of the life of the suspect, the eldest daughter, and of Mr. Witcher in parts. Then there is a secondary trial and a conviction. So it's about the murder. It is. But there's so much detail in here. It is insane. So she relates it to the development of detective novels and fiction in general. So Collins and Dickens and Mary Elizabeth Braddon, for example, were writing at the time and all talked and wrote about this murder. So there's that. There's newspapers. There is the development of the police force. There's journalism coverage. Corruption is covered. It's the most detailed PhD thesis you could ever want on this subject. It's readable, don't get me wrong, and I enjoyed it, 3 stars, but it took a long time to read. And a lot of the stuff that she tries to connect or does connect didn't have to be, and this would have picked up the pace a lot more and not been so sprawling and ungainly. I have more of her work. I will read it, but if it's going to be like this, at least I'm glad I know ahead of time just how verbal and wandering a lot of it is, but still good. I did watch the first, is it a movie? It's 3 or 4 movies that are on Amazon Prime, at least to stream. And I enjoyed that much more, and it made much more sense than reading the book did. So, you know, whatever. Okay, 2 more left, I swear. This is The Red Virgin and the Vision of Utopia by Mary M. and Brian Talbot. This is nonfiction, graphic novel about, I still don't remember her name, Louise Michelle. I'm giving this 2 stars, and that's mostly because of the artwork. So here, it's you know, a limited palette, black and white with red. It's Brian Talbot, you know. Where this went wrong, just about everywhere. It's really piecemeal about Louise. You just get little snippets of, like, skimmed parts of her life. It's set around a narrative of 2 authors, so I don't even remember, or one author who is talking to a woman who picks her up for her book tour. I can't remember the author's name, and I don't care to look. About how they met Louise once and talking about her murder because her funeral had, her funeral had just happened in Paris, and this is like all set around Paris. So it jumps back and forth in time of this random author and her one-time brief cup of coffee with Louise. Again, weird little skimmed snippets of Louise's life. Nothing about the context of the time, nothing about why she was so angry, nothing about why she was fighting, nothing about any of the battles that were fought in Paris. Just, I don't know what the point was, because it's not, I don't know anything about Louise other than she fought for a vision of Utopia. She was sent to New Canberra Island, a remote penal colony off the coast of Australia, you know, up there. She was sent there for a while and felt the same way, and then she got pardoned and sent back. What saved this book from a 1 star is, quite frankly, the back of the book has maybe 5 to 10 pages of a timeline of Louise's life, and all of that information should have just been the book, not these weird half things, because this is supposed to be teaching the non-Francophone world about Louise and her life and what she stood up for. This book doesn't do that. So I don't know. Generous 2 stars, but really 1. A bummer. And last but not least is Dancing at the Pity Party, a dead mom graphic memoir by Tyler Fetter. Really, really liked this one. 4 stars. Losing a parent is so tough. If you have been there, I feel you. It's about how much she loved her mom and their relationship, and what a great, cool, smart, caring, wonderful person her mother was. It's about Tyler and her sisters getting through her mom's not feeling well and diagnosis, and then the funeral. And she's Jewish, so, you know, going through the Seder and afterwards trying to get through her life. And there are photographs throughout, which I really liked, but it's about, you know, grief and how you handle a monumental loss like this when someone is so loved and they're such a part of your life. I related so much, and maybe I lived too much in the past and I hold past major events too close to me. That's probably very true, but I felt like I was right there with her, going through the initial grief after losing a parent, the first couple of weeks and then the first couple of months, and what it's like longer term. So I really, really liked this one. If you have lost a parent, or you just want to read something about grief or anything, I mean, it's delightfully drawn. Beautifully colored and illustrated. I liked all of it. I just really liked this one. So again, 4 stars, recommend. Okay, that's it for me. 29 minutes. That's not too bad for so many books, right? Sorry it's so long. Please feel free to put it on fast forward. I won't be offended. And I brought 3 books in that I am working on now. So I'm halfway through Down by the River by Robyn Carr. This is the 3rd in the trilogy of the Grace Valley series, which starts just before the Virgin River series starts. Their town's not too far apart. I am working on Vanessa and Her Sister by Priya Parmar. I'm halfway through. This is historical fiction about Vanessa Bell and Virginia Woolf. So their adults' lives growing up together with their brother and the houses and engagements, marriages, blah, blah, blah. So this is entertaining. And then the one I am determined to finish by next week, so help me God, The Age of Wonder by Richard Holmes, about science and development of different kinds of industries and all sorts of things in the 1700s. So I'm going to finish this book. All right. What are you guys reading? Have you read any of these books? Any more questions for me about anything at all? Leave them below. I will be checking in hopefully Saturday afternoon after working and stuff. So I hope you're all doing well and staying safe, taking care, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Bye.